All right, we are live. Hello, everybody. Hi, Cody.
Hello.
This is you are my second guest since I started this back up who has not been on my coffee chats, like podcast, whatever we want to call it, before. So I figured, well, first of all, I'm really excited to talk to you just because, like, I just love your stuff on the internet. Like, it's like sometimes I said this in my post, but I sometimes feel like it's really cool that I get to be a content creator because I get to like listen to talk to people like you who otherwise I wouldn't get to talk to at all, which is just really cool for me. Anyways, just give us a little background on you and also the resources that you have for data analysts and everybody who's here. Say hello in the chat and feel free to drop your questions. And even if they're not in the flow, I'll try and star them and like come back to them. So yeah.
Nice. Well, yeah, likewise. I think I've been following your content for a while and I love your perspective on things. I think it's a really like down to earth and like practical perspective for breaking into data. Well, and it makes sense that it's that way because you did it yourself. And so yeah, big fan of this stuff that you put together too. So yeah, I guess background on me. I have been in data since graduating college. So that's almost a decade now. I started as a data analyst, working in risk analytics, and then transitioned into more of the marketing and growth side. And I've been doing that all the way up into today, sort of like at various different companies and scales and that sort of thing. So I've worked at startups, I've worked at really big tech companies, and done a bunch of stuff in data, sort of I guess related to growth and marketing. So that's the TLDR. And then I also I've been working with my friend Kyle on what was a newsletter called The Query,
Yeah.
and we just launched a job board. So that's at thequery.jobs, where we're trying to build a job board for data people that is like a tailored experience for people that are searching for data jobs. And so we're working really hard on that. We're really excited about it. And yeah, we're hopeful to build something like useful to the community.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. I totally want to hear more about that. I have like so many questions I could ask. I did comment to you that you should follow Dustin because he posts a lot of jobs. Another person who do you know who Ethan Aaron is?
I've heard the name, yeah.
Ethan Aaron, he is the CEO of a company called Portable. But
Hmm.
he comments. I see him all the time in my feed commenting, great role for my analytics network. So if you connect with him a lot, you'll get a lot of jobs through there. Kelly Adams also comments that a lot, like great role for my network. Um,
Nice. Yeah,
yeah.
I was wondering, how does Dustin does he like manually curate all of those jobs every week? Like 70 jobs? If he does, kudos to him. That's amazing. That's so much work.
Yeah, he does. I spoke on he does a once a year, or I think twice a year actually. Um, it's kind of like a online conference thing. I don't remember what the name of it, like I don't remember what they call it. But basically it's like people trying to get into data analytics, and he does like a
Mhm.
jobs report now. Like he basically not only does he make that post, but he also like collects the data of the jobs that he collects in those posts every week and then report it out
Mm.
on like kind of the state of the data analytics job market as seen by his LinkedIn feed.
Wow, that's so interesting. Super cool. Yeah, I DM'd him after you tagged me, so waiting for his response. But yeah, I'm super curious to talk to him about it.
Yeah. So I'm curious, have you like thought about partnering up that, like talking to other people? Like I know I talk about Teal a lot. You've probably seen me talk about Teal. I
Hmm.
love Teal. I know a lot of people talk about Teal like because they're sponsored to talk about Teal. I personally have used Teal in my actual job search and stuff, and I talk about Teal for free all the time. So like it's not just like a sponsored plug. Like I actually really like Teal to everyone watching, mainly for them, not for you, Cody.
Yeah.
But they're good. They might be interested in that. And then Maven Analytics is a curated curated data platform for data analysts, and they have the portfolios and
Mhm.
everything. So I bet
Yeah.
they would be really, and they're super friendly. They're really nice. They would probably be really interested to hear about your jobs board too.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. We told our newsletter about it last week, and then I just posted about it this week. I'm gonna start I took a couple months off. I was telling you from LinkedIn content to kind of work on this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm gonna start, I guess come out of my hole, and posting on LinkedIn more and talking to people again. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see, um, how we can help those other companies and how maybe they can help us, and we can all kind of lift each other up and work together. So
Yeah.
see what happens.
Yeah. So I'm interested to hear from you, like the perspective of being in data for a while and then being in different roles in data. I think is such a fascinating thing to then go back and give advice to people who are just trying to become data analysts, because like as we talked about, my content is like exclusively like this is what I've done in the last 2 years. Here's what's worked for me. Here's what hasn't.
Mhm.
But you've got kind of this perspective, and I think it's really interesting. You said you were in like risk, right? And then you were in like marketing, which are really different realms of data analytics. And I feel like I could spend a whole hour just talking to you about like the differences between them and how you grow individually in each of them. But to then kind of circle back and now have you did your guide, how to become a data analyst, which we both called our thing, how to become a data analyst. And then you have your newsletter and then this jobs board. Kind of circling back to kind of the beginning of it is a really interesting perspective. So have you noticed from your perspective, like the things that people are focusing on versus the things that you think that they should be focusing on versus the things that jobs are looking for, like kind of the juxtaposition of those things? You know what I'm asking of you right now?
Yeah. So I'm trying to figure out like the right way to articulate this. I've been thinking about this for maybe a week or two now. One of the things that I hear people like, especially when they're just starting out, everybody's saying like, do projects, do projects, do projects. And most people don't know like what that means.
Yeah.
And so I've been thinking like, how do you explain to somebody like what a project is when they don't know? And I think the right way, and it's gonna be clunky because I'm still kind of working through. I need to write about this so I can articulate it better. But I think like there's a way to tie this to almost like being an entrepreneur or like starting a business in doing a data project. And
Mhm.
so what I mean there is like when you're starting a business, you're focusing on a problem. And that's at the core of like a data project, like that project should be trying to solve a problem. And so like most, people that are just starting a business, the advice that more experienced people will give them is solve a problem that you have. And so I think the same can be true when it comes to like portfolio projects. And so it's like I think this is maybe a good opportunity to talk about your ring data and your post on that, because yeah, exactly. So like I also have an Aura ring, and it was something I was really interested in. Is like, how does various things that I do on a daily basis impact my sleep? And so there's this Aura ring. For those that don't know, it's basically this ring that tracks things like your heart rate variability, and blood oxygen, and that sort of thing. And what's cool about it is you can see like what your sleep score was and how much you slept and what your heart rate was and all of that, and then correlate that with like how you felt on a day-to-day basis. So I found out like if I have a glass of wine at night, like that totally destroys my sleep. So if I want to sleep good, like I probably shouldn't have a glass of wine. And so when it comes to like just starting out in data, like those are I think the like portfolio projects or things to try to attack is like what are the problems that I'm experiencing in my daily life? How can I find a data set maybe just like tangentially related to that problem, and then just do like simple stuff like for like the Aura Ring example, it would be maybe in a spreadsheet you keep track of your like how you felt on a daily basis, using a score of like 1 to 3. 3 means you felt amazing, 2 means you felt average, and 1 means you felt below average. And then exporting your Aura Ring data, and then like correlating like your total sleep score or your total amount slept with how you felt on a daily basis. And that's like an example of a really simple project, but that like you get the full experience of being a data analyst by like doing that. And so that's an area that I want to do more thinking on and like become more eloquent at speaking on, because I feel like that's one of the biggest unlocks for people once they figure out how to do the project. Like that's how you get really good fast.
Mhm.
And so yeah. Do you have any thoughts on that, or like How do you speak about that?
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about this as well. I think that actually a post, I think it was you, maybe Kyle, made months and months ago about data projects, and I had seen like this kind of advice to go out there and don't just use like a standard out of the box. A lot of people say like the Titanic data set. After the
Mm,
Google certificates course, there's like this cycling bike share data set that a lot of people use. And so, a nuance to the advice that I give people, which I'm pretty sure it was you who was like, "That's a really good point. I'll put that in my guide." Was
mm,
that your first project maybe doesn't need to be that, because my first project, I remember being so overwhelmed, and someone had told me, "Download your LinkedIn data and do a project on it," and it was like the worst, some of the worst advice I had received, because I had almost no LinkedIn data. There was almost nothing there. Like it was just like I was connected with like 200 data analysts. Two thumbs up. So like I tried to make a project on that and there was nothing. And I felt like such a failure. And then I was like trying to find a business problem and everything. And then when like I got to interviews and stuff, I hadn't even like just done projects, just practicing like the skills that I needed to use. Like I had like not just done an easy project to ignore the business questions and just been like, do I know how to use the sum function in a SQL query? Do I know how to
mhm.
use the where function? Can I do a simple join? Which might sound like the most basic advice, but I just, because I was like so caught up in like, oh, you need to go on Kaggle or like download all the weather data from an API. I was like so overwhelmed by that I like overshot it. So I think your first project, just use the tools. Don't solve any business problems.
Yeah.
But then, kind of after that, because in general, the market right now is not good enough that you'll just get a job from doing that. Maybe at
Mhm.
one point in time it was. So then I think the next step is, that's a really good one. One of my friends right now, who I think is actually listening right now, she was showing me at her work, they have Tableau dashboards that have been built for them. And I was like, those are so bad. And she's thinking about becoming a data analyst. And she's like, I think maybe a good project could be for me to like redo them. Cause like I'm the end user here. I'm like, that is the most perfect project I could possibly think of. Like at your job, data that you need as a business user, that you go and do a project that gives you that data in Tableau, like sorted. Your work is done here.
Mhm.
Do that.
Yeah. No, yeah, I think you're so right. Like there's a and I'm experiencing this now. Like I've been exploring more, I guess, data engineering type stuff. Like I've been doing a lot more on Google Cloud Platform, and like I've been using Dagster and Airflow a bit more. And it's really hard to figure out how I'm going to use it before I've gone through like a tutorial that just shows like what it does.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I think that's so true. I also think people can get stuck in that like, you know, tutorial tornado
Yeah.
where it's just like they're constantly just following these tutorials that show them how to use these tools. But there's like a certain like I don't know, like more abstract thinking that where you basically have to like take the business problem and the skills and apply them together. And like I think that's the hardest jump to make.
Mhm.
But to your point, it's like you can't make that jump if you don't know how to use a sum function or you don't know how to do a join and you don't know the difference between a left join and an inner join because then you just get stuck on that phase. So yeah, then I guess I'm curious what you think. Like the question is then like when do you know you're ready to make that jump? You know, like when do you know enough? Um,
Yeah.
I'm curious. Yeah, do you have a perspective there?
Yeah. I said in my book that once you have about two or three portfolio projects per skill that you list in your resume, then like, and you feel comfortable using it, then that's when, it's time to start jumping into the next, then it's time to find a data set from your life, or, kind of one that you can maybe get a more interesting insight from. Otherwise, it's, this kind of stepwise process. And then when you're working on these next projects, you can do those in parallel with job searching. Everyone kind of decides when they start job searching, but your like first probably like 50 job applications will probably not go anywhere, unfortunately. And so, like, I think it's okay to do those things in parallel. Some people think they need to be all the way there, but
Yeah.
but importantly, I think you're never going to feel ready, and it needs to be hard. And so I like when I talk to people who are becoming data analysts right now who are learning, I try and give them like as many resources and tips and everything as I can. And I say, do these projects. But at some point, when you make the jump from doing guided projects or, doing simple things to then trying to solve problems with data, which is what you really need to do as a data analyst, it's going to be hard and there's no way around it. And like, I can't help you through it or else you won't become a data analyst.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, very good advice. And I also think very similar to how I have the 6-month roadmap sort of laid out, where it's like do a couple of these guided tutorials and then jump into a portfolio project that's more tailored towards like the single skill you're trying to develop. Like I think Excel and spreadsheets is the first one because like once you understand that, it's so much easier to jump into these BI tools and SQL and that sort of thing. And so rather than drowning on 3 different tools, like just master or not master, but become competent at one before you try to like, add in the second and then the third and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I was really surprised actually. My friend who I was telling you about. I was with her last night, and she was showing me like a course platform that she's on, and they recommended courses for her, and they had recommended like Excel Basics, Excel Advanced, Excel Dashboards, Excel Visualizations, Excel certification, and then the same thing for Tableau, and the same thing for Power BI, and then the same thing even for Python. And I was like, wow, like I'm just going to remove so many of these courses from your like beginner learning path because one, you should not start with those things, and then two, like you should do the Excel basics and then you should do a project using them. Like you should do like the functions and stuff and then do a project, and like you should learn the Tableau basics and then do a project. And I was thinking about it the whole way home, and I was talking to my boyfriend. I was like, man, that really sucks. Like if you just follow that path and you think you need to take, let's say, Tableau introduction and then Tableau advanced, and then you don't try and do your first project until you finish Tableau advanced, I feel like I would come out of that and be like, well, I don't know how to do anything. I just spent 3 months on this and I can't do a darn thing.
Yeah. It's so true. And it comes down to just how people learn. Like everybody, I guess there's different like learning styles and that sort of thing, but I find it hard to believe that anybody can just like read a book and learn how to do, use Tableau well. It's like if you just read a Tableau book and you never build a report, like all my money's on the people that are, skimming the book and then fumbling around in the tool versus, reading the book 3 times through without touching the tool.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that just like the learning, I was talking to somebody earlier. I was doing a coffee chat with, I do some coffee chats with people who have read my book, and he was saying how he basically like was in kind of like engineering before. And basically there was like things that people didn't have data for. And then he was like making them then get data for it. And like, I kind of like drove a data-driven transformation basically. He's like, yeah, but going for interviews is tough because there's people who have a data analyst experience and I don't. I was like, but you do. Like you actually have some of the most important. And I think a piece of advice that really resonated with him is, especially if you look at it, like I like to use the words tool agnostic. So tool agnostic, for anyone who doesn't know, means like not tied to a specific tool. So you might not have specifically experience in Tableau, but if in your last job you can say, well, but I was a business user and I did experience like saying essentially this should be data driven. How can we make it data driven? Getting the data and then presenting in a way that I can use and then the other stakeholders can use. And tool agnostically, that's exactly what we're doing as a data analyst. And I think that can apply to a lot of people out there in a lot of their jobs to kind of more broadly, instead of being like, well, I don't know, I never used Tableau before.
Yeah.
But you have gotten insights to business users.
Yeah, I think it's so important to not be I think when you're tool agnostic, it builds good habits around just like the way the world works because things are going to evolve and tools are going to change over time. And it's like your ability to be dynamic and take like what you know about one tool and apply it to whatever the new thing is. Because usually the new thing does a better job at solving some problem. And so, yeah, like I think at this point I've used 6 different BI tools. And the one that I've last used is my favorite one. And I feel like every new one I use is my new favorite one until I use a new one. But at the end of the day, like they're all essentially the same. There's like features that might make the analyst experience nicer, but at the end of the day, it's like you're ingesting some data set and then visualizing that data set to solve somebody's problem, you know? And so, yeah, I don't think it's helpful to get stuck on what tool you're using and, oh, I want to be an expert at this tool and that sort of thing. I think that can be useful maybe in a short period of time, maybe for like a year or two or that sort of thing, especially if you're like focused on a job where you want to be really good at Looker or, something like that.
Yeah.
But being open to new tools, I think it's good because it allows you to have like a mindset of change and the world changes. So,
Yeah. So I'm curious about this, the jobs platform. You said it's going to be like really curated. And so what's kind of your checklist of, so if not every job makes it onto it. So what does curated mean to you? What's the, the bar here for curated?
yeah. So one of the things that like, I think there's like maybe 8 or 9 things that like Kyle and I wrote down when we were like, we need a job board that can do this that other job boards that are more generalized can't do. One, for example, is like if you search LinkedIn for data analyst, there's probably like, and I've seen LinkedIn posts about this, there's probably like 20 to 40 different job titles for data analyst.
Mm-hmm.
And it's less about the job title and more about like what you do on a day-to-day basis. There are also like job titles that have the word analyst in them, but they don't use SQL, and so they're probably not aligned with the type of work that people who want to become data analysts are, trying to be doing on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one of the, I think, problems to solve that we're working on is like, how do we make sure that we are flagging all of the jobs that can be like a data analyst day to day? So, for example, like FP&A analyst, like that's not something that people will search for very often.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're interested in finance and data analytics, like that's an amazing job to get. And so that's one of them. The other is like people really care about the company, and this is something that we don't have built into the platform yet. But we've been getting feedback on my post about like it would be great to have like the company industry and the size of the company and that sort of things. But like in my experience, like I just came from Cash App, which is a big tech company, and there's lots of pros to working at a big tech company like Cash App. There's also cons, and then my prior job to that was at a less than 100-person company, and I was like the main analyst there. Lots of pros and lots of cons, and I think like depending on who you are and where you're at in your career, the type of company really matters. And so that's something that I think like if we can layer on to the jobs and into like one experience can like really elevate the search process. And then the third is like there are just a lot of features that we as data professionals want in a job search that just like doesn't make sense for more of a general job board like LinkedIn to create. So for example, like for me, I care about the data stack. Like I want to be working with a big data warehouse, not like a database. So like something that would be important to me is like I want to be using Snowflake or BigQuery, not Microsoft SQL Server. That's just like personal preference. And so being able to use the job board to flag companies that are asking for people with experience using Snowflake and BigQuery because that's what they use, versus Microsoft SQL Server, or maybe somebody like really prefers SQL Server over to some of the big like cloud data warehouses. And so I think giving people the optionality to parse through these jobs based on like what their preferences are is something that we're going to try really hard to do, and like serve data people and data people only.
Yeah. Do you think that you'll be able to, or do you think you're going to try and solve for this conundrum with entry level jobs being like,
Yes.
I need you to have 10 years of experience?
Yes. Yeah. So like we already have, there's a perks filter, and it works fairly good. Like there's still improvements that I need to make to this, but like no college degree required. That's one of the like filters for perks. We're trying to get really good at identifying internship and entry level jobs based on like the job description.
Hmm.
And so like when you use a filter for like level, you can, filter for entry level and they'll actually be entry level jobs rather than it's, the job title saying junior data analyst. And then they ask for 10 years of experience in Python and R.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I also think like part of that is just getting companies educated to like what they can expect from people applying to their jobs, And so I think like when we allow companies to post on the job board, for example, like we've been debating like should we force them into providing salary and not let anybody post on the job board without giving us salary. And like I think that's I'd be curious what people in the comments think about that. But like I think that's a good idea because then it forces the company to be very transparent.
Hmm.
And like I don't want to waste 30 minutes of my time applying for a job that doesn't meet my salary expectations, And I think that saves time on both ends. And so yeah, like I think that's if we can figure out how to add more transparency into the process for both sides, the candidate and the employer, I think that can add a lot of value too.
Yeah, I could do a whole campaign on educating employers about job descriptions. I actually very pleasantly, the job that I'm at now had a really good job description written for it. And I remember like I had heard that the job might be opening up, and then like a month later had like then gotten to see the job posting, and I remember reading through it and being like, oh my gosh, this is so much better than the last time around. Because the first time I was job searching, every single job description I looked at, it was like, 5 years of MySQL experience and must have a data science, job and everything
Yeah.
beforehand. And it's like, how is this a junior position? Do you have any tips for people about how to like I get asked this all the time. People are like, these job descriptions for entry level roles, like, how do I know which ones I should apply for and which ones are actually just too far out of reach?
Yeah. I think most of the context there is in like less of like the requirements section of the job and more so when they are talking about what they need this person to do. So like when I'll give an example of like Cash App. So when I got the job at Cash App, the job post talked a lot about expansion strategy and like how can we use data to help us figure out how to go into new markets and what our approach should be, audience sizing, stuff like that. And
Mm-hmm.
that's something like I had done a lot before and I knew kind of like exactly what they were talking about. And so that to me was like a signal of like, okay, this is in line like with what I want to be doing. And it's something I know how I would approach. So like I should apply for this job. Whereas I think if you read if a job of what they want you to do and you have no idea what they're talking about, and they're asking for like 10 years of experience, like I probably wouldn't waste my time on that. But if they're asking for 10 years of experience and it's a space really well, like let's say you're obsessed with cryptocurrency and you've done a bunch of portfolios on cryptocurrency, but you don't have a lot of experience, like that's a young industry. There's not going to be a lot of people with 10 years of experience. And so that might just be a formality on the job post. Like I would absolutely still apply to that job because you have so much context specific knowledge. And so that's something that I want to start talking a lot more about on LinkedIn as well for data people is like building context specific knowledge in like an area. I think it always makes sense to start as a generalist in data, but I think to make fast career progress, it pays to specialize in like an industry or like department. So like for example, for me, it was not an industry, but a department. Like I focused heavily on marketing and growth analytics.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I saw way more opportunity because of that specialization than I would have if I, had stayed more of a generalist. But I also started as more of a generalist analyst. So I think, I think it's best to start as a generalist, but then try to transition into more of a specialist in whatever the domain is that you're choosing.
Yeah, you are not the first coffee chat guest to say that with the specialization. I think I definitely intended to start as a generalist, and then I ended up getting a job as a Tableau consultant. So I pretty much just did Tableau, which I loved. But that led me to get this job that I have now, because when I was at the Tableau conference, I was talking to somebody who happened to be a VP of data and analytics, and she really needed somebody on the central data team that knew how to essentially be a Tableau consultant. And so that's how I got the job that I have now. And I think that I probably wouldn't have even gotten out of, like, if I had applied for the job, which I don't know how I would have found it because there's so much noise, on the internet. But if I had applied, I don't even think I would have gotten out of the stack of resumes, because I was only a year into my career at that point. They were looking for somebody who was like intermediate, and GitLab is pretty strict about they can't hire you as an intermediate if you have a year of experience. They just kind of, because they're a public company, and they have a handbook with the levels that they kind of have to follow through. I probably wouldn't even have made it out of the resume stack. I think 1,000. I think I saw on LinkedIn 1,000 people had applied for the same job as me.
Wow.
But I got it because I had made the connection, and also I had the specialized skills. And now it's kind of the question of what's next now that I've specialized, because obviously I can't just do Tableau forever, nor do I want to. But the way that I'm bringing value to the company right now is that I am using Tableau, and I am communicating with business users. And we have analytics engineers who are building out the data models for me. And so, my question has been how do I progress and get promoted and stuff along the data analyst track? Being specialized, because I can't get much more specialized than this, right? So do I need to go broader to go upwards? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I'm still figuring out what that looks like for me.
Do you like the more technical side of the role, or do you like the more strategy and decision making side of the role? Because I think usually people fall into one camp or the other.
Yeah, I talked to my boss's boss the other day, and he's like, well, you could take an analytics engineering internship and, go that direction. I was like, I don't want to be an analytics engineer. I love the strategy. I love the decision-making. I love that I get to work with business users. And so a lot of my advice to people is often kind of coming from that space of the thing that I'm bringing value to my company for every day is not necessarily the fact that I know how to make a nice dashboard in Tableau. They're helpful. But it's how I can communicate with and manage stakeholders and say, strategically, I actually don't think that you should put that on your dashboard at all. This is actually what you need, and we should prioritize this. And that's much more important. I love that stuff. I think it's so cool.
Yeah, that's where I think the specialization in a department or an industry makes a ton of sense. Because if you're let's say, for example, your stakeholders are marketing or finance, intimately understanding marketing, so Facebook ads or how SEO works and all of that, you're going to have so much more context when you're helping make those decisions and how you build things into the dashboards and that sort of thing. Or industry specific, if you're, building dashboards around cryptocurrency, it pays to really understand that industry, And so I think when you're helping in the strategic decision-making process, and that's the thing that you specialization in industry or department or both, or the way to go. Whereas I think I have more of a technical bias. I like the process of building the thing more than I like actually using the thing. And so for people that fall on that side of the spectrum, I would say it makes more sense to specialize in different tool sets and keep growing there. So it's once you're comfortable in SQL, then start adding Python and pandas. Once you're comfortable in SQL and Python and pandas, then start adding things that'll help you build data pipelines, and then add APIs, and then keep going down that path. But yeah, I think I don't think you figure that out right away. But once you do, I think it pays to decide, because for me, I got way more, I don't know, just fulfillment out of my job when I was doing more of the stuff that I love, which was the building side. And it sounds like for you, more of the strategic decision making and that sort of thing. So
yeah, I definitely see myself as very much I learn how to do the technical tools. Everything I do, it's I figure out how to get it to do the thing that I need it to do. I do enjoy the process, but it's I know how to use SQL, but I do use ChatGPT often to write SQL, because it's I know what I want the data to look like, and I'm not super concerned about memorizing the exact syntax. It's this is what I need the data to look like. and I like learned how to do some Python stuff, and I've used APIs before a couple times because like I wanted to build, basically I would like to move out of where I live currently, and I wanted to do a big analysis of the whole country of like places that it would be good for us to live. But my boyfriend manages a rock climbing gym and we're rock climbers, and so I like had to like bring in data about like rock climbs, and then also like census data to understand like where there's population and money and everything. And so I was not, I mean, I learned how to do the Python and stuff in order to get what I wanted done, but it was like I had an end that I was going for at the end of it. When you were doing
Yeah.
like marketing and growth and stuff, did you ever do A/B testing?
Yes. Yeah.
What did
Yeah.
you use to do that? Were you using Python?
So like usually there's tools like Google Optimize or Optimizely. Those are like the two big ones. Those are the ones I've used. And they basically will just like do the analysis for you for the most part. Like all these tools usually have a UI that you can log into. You throw the scripts on your website, and then like when I was at Drive Time, that was my first job. We were doing things like subject line or not subject line, heading testing. So like when you go to their homepage, one heading says this, and then the other heading says this, and like which one converts into leads more often, that sort of thing. I know you can use Python for like some of the statistical analysis, but in my experience, most of that has just been done like natively within these A/B testing tools.
That's really interesting. I think that A/B testing is really cool. I got my master's degree in occupational therapy, and I did research, and so I'm familiar with the different like statistical tests and everything. And I did recently think of like if I was to go in one direction to specialize like in a functional team, I think it would be either like product or marketing, because I get to do like A/B testing and stuff. I definitely wouldn't want to go to like engineering. That would be really boring for me. I know that like
Mhm.
some people have like I know that a lot of people at my company can like care about like how much we're spending on Snowflake, like optimizing queries and like our Snowflake spend and stuff. And that just sounds so boring to me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I hear you. Yeah, it's a. I really like I was drawn to the marketing and growth side of things because it feels like the most exciting part of the business, product too. But like, everybody cares about growing revenue and growing the business. And so when you're like super attached to the hip, in the things that are like doing that, I just, that's the thing that like made me really excited about marketing and why, I started learning, the different channels and how they worked and all of that. Cause it was like, this is cool. Like this is directly tied to revenue and growing the business. Like I love that.
Yeah. As a pivot question, I'm curious, what kind of things do you talk about in your newsletter? Is this kind of the same demographic of people getting into data, or like, things that you've learned that people should know up here? What's your,
Yeah, so it's sort of like morphed over time. So in the beginning, we tried a lot of things, but it's like where we landed is we want it to be a newsletter where beginners and intermediate data analysts alike can get something out of it. And so like every week we do a SQL tips section, and often, sometimes these are, I guess, more basic SQL stuff, but more often than not, I'd say they're a little bit more advanced, or maybe not advanced, but intermediate. So if you're just starting data analytics, like it's probably not the most useful section of the newsletter for you. But we also have a section where we'll like link to portfolio projects and tutorials or pieces of content and resources that we think are good. And those are usually tailored like more beginner friendly. We also post jobs. And I think we'll probably start doing a little bit more of that as we continue building out the job board. We post like contract opportunities. So I think this is actually like a great way for people to get work experience without like landing a W-2 job and going through this really intense interview process and all of that, where you go on to Upwork, or on our newsletter, you'll get these opportunities sent to you each week.
Mhm.
And somebody needs help with like a finance Excel spreadsheet or something like that, and they need you to build like a couple charts, or somebody needs help with like a Power BI dashboard and that sort of thing. And it's, that maybe they'll pay you $100, or maybe it's like $100 an hour. Like there's, I think all of those opportunities and everything in between. But regardless of like the compensation, I think just going out there and doing those things, like just expand your ability and then give you things to talk about when you do try to land that first job. So yeah, I think people that are more intermediate, just trying to make some money, or people that are trying to get experience and land their first job, like those opportunities are really good as well. And then, yeah, we've always had a meme section. So I think there are some brilliant data memes on the internet, and we do our best to seek those out and we put those at the end of every newsletter. But I'm also curious, like, what people would want to see. So yeah, in the comments, if there's like something that you think like Kyle or I have a perspective on that you'd like to hear more about, let us know and we'll test adding that to the newsletter.
Those things, all those things that you listed already were like very value packed. This came over from YouTube, but if you go to Cody's LinkedIn profile, then it's linked on his newsletter's linked on his profile. That's how you can get all of his stuff. I know you're on YouTube right now, but I don't know. You can just Google your name. You can LinkedIn your name, right?
Yes, yes. Or it's the query.jobs. That's the site you can sign up there too.
The interesting thing about this, like this sequel that might feel more intermediate, something I find is that in entry level SQL interviews, sometimes they'll ask you harder SQL questions intentionally to kind of like see how you think through it. And so I think that those would still, like, those are the still things that I would say, like, take a look at those things in the newsletter. I mean, if it's going to just be delivered to your inbox every week, like that sounds like an easy subscribe in my opinion, because then like every week I just get this thing that I can look at, and then I can like reason through how would I solve this problem if I don't know how to solve this problem, you know?
Yeah.
They're looking for that.
For sure. Yeah. Like when I used to interview analysts, I don't know how I feel about this. I'm curious to get your take on this. Because I haven't done this since my first job, but I started interviewing analysts towards the end of my first job, and we would ask these like riddle questions. And it wasn't like if the person can get this riddle right or wrong. It was more so like, do they get frustrated in solving this, or do they like light up and get excited? And
Yeah.
that was sort of like um, it was like a signal to us, like, okay, this person like likes the problem solving process versus like this person gets really frustrated with it. And I think you need to love the process as an analyst. So like we had this penny riddle where you have like 10 pennies and a triple beam scale, and one, they all look the same, but one penny weighs slightly more than the other nine. And so like how do you figure out what that one penny is in like the least number of ways possible? So you know, like one way would be you put four pennies on one side and four pennies on the other, and then one side goes down, and you know it's like, okay, it's one of those four pennies, and that counts as one.
Yeah.
But like things like that, yeah. What do you think about those sorts of questions that are seemingly completely unrelated, but you know?
Yeah, I love those. I mean, I think that so you might not have heard this from me because I don't talk about it a ton, but when I first started learning data analytics, I had no intention of switching careers to become a data analyst. I wanted to analyze spreadsheets as a side hustle. I thought I could make 20 bucks an hour analyzing spreadsheets, and it would be better than delivering for Instacart. So I was taking the Google Certificates course. I fell for the marketing. I thought it would take me a week to take the course, and I'd come out of it ready to get a job analyzing spreadsheets. I was wrong. But in the first module of the course, they had some like problem solving, like riddles stuff, and I was like, "This is awesome! I love this!" And I was like, "Wait a minute, this is like the foundation of what it's like to be a data analyst." And that was actually the first thing that like got me hooked on like, oh, and then when I realized it wasn't just the one module, it was actually 8, because that first module had been so heavy on like the riddle and the problem solving and stuff. I was like, yeah, I'll keep going. This is actually really cool.
Nice. Yeah. Do you remember any riddles that you went through during that course, or any top of mind?
No,
We
I
can
don't
rattle
remember
off
any
and
of
see
them.
if people can get them.
This one that Justin put up, this is not a riddle, but I think this is really funny. Explain it to me like I'm an apathetic 17-year-old. I actually
Yeah.
think it's better than explaining to me like I'm 5 because I don't know if you've tried to explain concepts to an apathetic 17-year-old, but wow, that's a good one. No, I don't remember
Yeah,
any of
it
the
is.
riddles. I don't even know if they were riddles or if it was like a visual thing with I feel like in my head I have it like it was like maybe a matching thing or something.
Mm,
All I know is that them making the connection that being a data analyst was just solving problems was like the best thing that they could have done for me because I love solving problems. And I was telling my friend recently about my job and they're like, well, what do you like about it? I was like, I get to solve problems all day long. Like,
yeah.
I'm not, I mean, I enjoy using Tableau, I enjoy using SQL, I enjoy all the things, but like at the core of it, I just get to solve problems all day long. And it isn't until I have been trying to solve the same problem incorrectly for at least 20 repetitions that I start to get a little bit frustrated.
Yeah. Yeah, but the payoff is so worth it. Like I it it's like the bane of my existence and also like the light of my life when there's a problem that feels so hard and you're sort of just like banging your head against the keyboard and you're so frustrated with it and then you solve it.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing better in life in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the big unlock moment. I think as I was first learning SQL and Python, I had posted that on my TikTok. That like when I first learned for loops in Python, for anyone who doesn't know, you don't need to know what they are, but basically I had to like visually like do it on my hand in order to understand like how a for loop works because it's like a positional thing as well as like a loop thing. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
and I was trying to consume so much information because when you're trying to become a data analyst, you just like have to consume so much information. That's why I try and make it easier for people and be like, there's all of this information that you don't need to consume. Um, but here's the information that you do need to consume that you can do the things. You know what I
Mhm.
mean by that?
Yeah, yeah, it's important. Yeah, it's like having the not to-do list is almost as important as having the to-do list, you know? And so like I think a good example of that is like how people structure their days, right? Like if you're, let's say you're working a full-time job and you're trying to make a career transition, like every minute of your day really counts. And so rather than like just stacking your to-do list of all the things that you need to do to transition your career, like it is almost probably more beneficial to make a not to do list so that you don't do the things that you know are not conducive to whatever your goal is, you know. And so
Mhm.
for me, it's like making sure my phone's in the other room when I'm focused on something, so I cannot get distracted.
Yeah.
I use an app called Freedom
Mhm.
that blocks certain websites during certain periods of my day. Like if I try to do, like a 3 or 4 hour deep work session in the morning and LinkedIn is blocked during those hours. Like if I go to that in my browser, I cannot access LinkedIn because I know I will just, whenever I run up against something difficult and whatever I'm working on, like, something in the back of my head is going to be like, oh, like do the easy thing, go on LinkedIn.
Dopamine.
And then I'll start scrolling, get the dopamine hit, and it completely like context switches and disrupts like whatever I'm doing in that moment.
Mhm.
And so I think the best thing to do is just like to control your environment where you literally cannot access these distracting things. So
Yeah. I when I really need to get something done, I'll use my like over the head headphones with like really like music that I'm psyched on at the moment to just like supplement dopamine into my brain.
yes,
But
yes,
I like
but
this not to do list idea. That's a funny way of putting it.
yeah, yeah, I think it's super helpful to, I don't know. I think especially with like the new year and stuff, I think it's a relevant conversation.
Mhm.
People set all these audacious goals for the new year, and when you set a lot of goals and then you don't accomplish them, like that it's like a negative signals to yourself, and I don't think that's like the most like mentally or emotionally helpful for people. Um, but I do think like removing the things from your life that are not conducive to whatever your goals are is an easier thing to approach. Um, and I think it can make like bigger changes. So that's like I'll set like not resolutions, but like it would be cool if I did these things this
Yeah.
year to sort of give myself an out if my priorities change or whatever. But then I do set like very specific like not to do things. Like last year, I didn't drink alcohol for an entire year. So I went from New Year's Eve to New Year's Eve, all 2023 with not a sip of alcohol. And like that made such a positive impact on my life. Like I wasn't a big drinker anyway, but it like if I drink once a month, like that was a momentum disruptor,
Hmm.
and not having that this past year was amazing. And so like that added a ton of value to my life. So yeah, that's what I like about the not to do rather than the like goal setting.
Yeah, my big change that I've been trying to work on recently, you had said you found with your Aura ring that if you had a glass of wine close to bedtime, it would ruin your sleep. I tend to eat late because I'm a rock climber, so
Mm,
I'll have my work day and then I'll go to the gym for like 3 hours and then I'll come home and it'll be like 8 p.m. and then I'll have to cook and then I'm eating at 9. And like my sleep quality is definitely a lot lower when I eat close to bedtime. So that's definitely like that not to do for the year for me is
mhm.
try and eat earlier. I also think that there's like I could have put a whole section in my book about like not to do specifically on the data analytics front, like course hopping, I think, just like taking another
Yeah.
course and taking another course or jumping from tutorial to tutorial. What would be some of your not to do things that you have seen? Like, because you see a lot of, being a content creator, you see a lot of the same things over and over. So, on the subject of course hopping and then repeatedly doing tutorials, what are some of your not to do data things?
I think the biggest thing for people is like I think we as like humans are sort of overambitious in like how we perceive time. And so I notice a lot of people will be like, I've got a long week or whatever this week, so I'm gonna like study for 8 hours each day on the weekend. And that just like almost never happens. And so your people are so much better off just dedicating like a small amount of time each day at the same time every day, and going with that approach than the like big chunk approach. So I think like I think like the course hopping and all that stuff, like those are big distractions as well. But if you're just doing something data related for, let's call it 60 minutes a day, and you decide you're going to do that for 12 months and you actually do that for 12 months, like that's hundreds of hours that you spent learning something. You're going to learn something, you're going to get relatively far by doing that.
Wow.
Whereas I think a lot of people will, they'll say, all right, I'm going to try to do 8 hours or 4 hours on Saturday, 4 hours on Sunday. And that's 8 hours total. That's more than if I do 1 hour every day.
Mhm.
But then they're going to have like a 50% hit rate. They're going to
Yeah.
only do that maybe 50% of the time. And so maybe they end up at the end of the year with 100 hours instead of the 365. And it's just mentally easier to like do an hour than it is to do 4 hours, and so procrastination plays less of a part. And so yeah, like my biggest advice for people is just whether it's morning. I think morning is the right choice for 80% of people. That's when you have the most like self discipline. That's usually the time that you can control most. Then at the end of the day, set an hour in the morning and do that every day for a year. Like you'll be amazed at where you're at.
Yeah.
Or if it's people in the evening, same thing. Like set a time every evening, maybe after the kids go to bed or whatever, and do that for a year, and you're going to get far.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. I when I was learning data analytics, I had just moved to the area that I live in now, and I had no friends, and my boyfriend's climbing gym was still being built, so I didn't have the gym to climb at, and it was cold because it was February, and so
mm,
I was actually like going to work. It was an internship, but it was basically work. Driving there, spent over an hour in the car each day, and then coming home, and then literally every single day just sitting down as soon as I got home and like eating while doing, and then just like learning data analytics on my laptop, usually in my bed because it's cold. Um, and usually like ate dinner in that position too, and just did nothing for like the entire February. But that was like a really unique thing because I don't have kids, I don't have pets, I have like some cacti, like my boyfriend was
yeah,
cooking like all the meals for me and also doing most of the cleaning at that point in time. And
nice.
so unless you have that very, very unique situation of being able to do that, then I agree you're just not going to be able to follow through on those blocks of time. On the flip side, I don't like seeing when people recommend people do 20 minutes a day, because the like amount of time it just takes to get all like the things open, and like for me to like mentally open all those tabs back up, like I like 20 minutes, like that's like I spent half that time just opening up the tabs in my brain, you know, and then by the time 20
Yeah.
minutes is over, I've done nothing. But an hour, I think, is really actually very doable.
Yeah, there's science behind that. I think it takes on average about 15 minutes to context switch, meaning like get your brain going from whatever it was that you were doing prior to studying data analytics to switching over to data analytics. So then, if you do 20 minutes, you're probably really only getting 5 minutes, which is definitely not enough each day. So yeah, I think 45 minutes minimum, because then you get a half hour, an hour is good. 90 minutes, I think most people can like sit there and focus for about 90-minute blocks.
Mhm.
And so like, I think if you have the 90, that's the best way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's making, I saw a thing today that said, it said if you, an hour of your day is just 4% of your day. So if you spend an hour a day reading, that's just 4% of your day. And I was really irritated by that, because like, sure, it's 4% of your day, but like, how many hours are you awake during the day, you know? And then versus like, I
Yeah,
actually think I think it makes people feel bad, because then it's like, well, if it's just 4% of your day, why can't you spend an hour doing it? I think that we shouldn't like minimize how much carving an hour out of your day is, because that's probably like 50% of the hours that you have to yourself during the day to like be a human.
totally. Yeah. And I mean, when you like zoom out and look at like a life, let's say on average, a lucky person gets to live till they're 80 or 90 years old.
Yeah.
And then you look at the number of hours there, like an hour is really important, like we should never discount we should never discount time. Like at the end of the day, like that's the whole purpose of money typically, is like buying time back.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so like an hour is very important. So I agree. Just 4% of your day makes it seem like you're discounting it rather than like shining a light on how important it is.
Yeah. Well, it's 5 o'clock my time. Do you have any parting thoughts that you would like to leave us with before we go?
Uh, I guess let's have a strong 2024, everyone.
Yeah.
I think it's fun when we reach a new year, because I think it brings a lot of like reflection for people on how the last year went, what they want to do this year,
Hmm.
and it can create a lot of like positive momentum for people. And so yeah, would love to hear kind of like what people are trying to achieve this year, what's on their not to do list, what's on their to do list. Um, and yeah, let's all support each other on LinkedIn and the data community, and doing all those things. So
Yeah.
um, yeah,
Yeah.
that's my last words.
It's good last words. I think that the time slot that we've got here, I think that some people are probably going to watch this tomorrow, because it seems like the noon time slot does better for me than the later in the day, because like people in other time zones.
Mhm.
But everyone watching other days as well, we'd love to hear your. It's just fun to go into New Year together and get to support other people and be like, I'm not the only one who's trying to become a better person this year. Like
Yeah.
we're all trying to do that for ourselves. So
And it's contagious too. Yeah, it's like the saying, like you're the average of the three people you spend your time around, is like so true.
yeah.
And so yeah, I think it's helpful to be part of a community of people that are really trying to better themselves, and you know make positive changes in their life. So yeah, that's what I wish for everyone. Let's crush 2024.
Yeah, this has been great. Really, really interesting stuff. I love that I get to do these things. And so thanks so much for coming on live with me for this chat.
Yeah, of course. Let's do it again.
Yeah. Okay, everybody else, thank you so much for coming to our stream. And it is ending.